Let's just introduce you to somebody else who saw what happened in the early hours of Wednesday. Piki Seku. Have I got that right, Piki?
Yeah.
And you live locally?
Yeah, I do. I live just opposite Grenfell Tower.
What did you see in the early hours of Wednesday?
In the early hours of Wednesday, I saw, about 2 a.m, I saw basically a perfect line of fire going up beside the building.
Quickly?
Very quickly, that looked definitely like pipe work or something like that exploded. Not quite like the malfunctioned fridge that was told to us to pause initially. And I saw a lot of panic as well, like throughout the night. Like you already know the story about what's basically happened. But I think now what I'm seeing, which I want to talk about, which is positive, is like the overwhelming, like the sense of love that the community has come. People from South, people from North, like people from all over London, come in to show support and show love. And it's the kind of thing where I feel like this isn't documented enough. Like on the lower income end of the spectrum, they document a lot. We like to document violence and like bleak desperation and stuff like that. People feeling like, but even in the wake of such a horrifying incident, we can see like positive things from everyone around here. And I feel like there just needs to be more of a care for human life rather than for money right now. These regeneration projects are clearly not helping. They're not helping at all. Look, that £10 million that was spent on that building, it did not help anything. They put flammable panels onto the outside of the building.
We think.
Well, Andrew Goldman couldn't even justify what the material was made of when he was speaking to Piers Morgan yesterday. So, I mean, I have serious doubts about that organisation. But I feel like the tenant management organisation in Kensington, Chelsea, they need to be investigated, and so do all the other organisations that manage tenants in blocks around the areas where people are feeling neglected because people complain about the serious issues like elevators being broken, like windows being smashed. A window killed a 10-year-old child in my building. A 10-year-old child fell to his death from the 18th floor of my building, and it didn't even touch the news. They just covered it up, and they didn't even fix the windows. And yet they have money to make a nice lobby and put these panels on the outsides for the reasons that they put in the planning documents. They said it was for, what did they say? It was for the appearance of the area, because it's such a high building, it could be an eyesore to some of the new residents coming to luxury apartments. No, that can't happen. The TMO needs to be investigated.
How much confidence do you have in a public inquiry? Okay, I mean, it sounds like a bureaucratic phrase, a public inquiry, but it will compel people potentially to appear under oath. In other words, if they perjure themselves, if they lie, the full force of the law bears down on them. As somebody who feels strongly that questions haven't been sufficiently answered, do you have confidence in the process that we as a country decide is going to get to the bottom of this, a public inquiry? How much confidence do you have? Because what else is there?
Well, how public would the inquiry be? Because
we don't know yet.
The situation is, unfortunately, right now, I don't want to come off as one of these skeptical conspiracy people, but I just happen to, having lived in an area like a lot of people where we weren't amazingly privileged from the start, I just feel like it isn't. The system has the ability to fail you easily. The system has failed a lot of people that I know in countless different ways. People who are very good people who have no intention to do wrong to anyone. It's just I don't really think I have a trust in the legal system, unfortunately. But if it was a public inquiry led by the people, like people that we know in the community, like ourselves, then I guess I can trust it.
We were talking to a resident earlier, quite a high-profile resident actually, who came up and said, look, it's been really touching and it's wonderful that people have felt the urge, the desire, the need, the compulsion to come here with water and food and clothes and toiletries, all the rest of it. But there comes a point actually when you've got to stop giving because people are just getting in the way. This stuff is just going to rot. The food's just going to rot. You know, there's a danger sometimes, danger's probably the wrong word, there's a hazard that when people give too much, eventually they've given enough. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, but you know, it's not a thing of giving too much. It's just that right now, obviously, there's a story and there's a lot of hype. So a lot of people are coming down. A lot of people are giving. It's great. It's really good. I just hope that when the story goes away and all the press are gone, people are still coming to give, because obviously the food will expire in a couple of days, but the people are not going to get their homes back in a couple of days. They're not going to get their possessions back in a couple of days. So it's not like they need a ridiculous amount of food right now, but if the support can continue afterwards, if we can keep this kind of vibe of giving to each other, like when other communities in other areas suffer in similar ways, we can go and do the same kind of thing. That it needs to continue though. It can't just be like one of those passing stories, because we're going to be left, like everyone in the community is going to be left with the losses.
It's a horrible thought, Piki. But the thing is, where this building is. So it's so high profile, it's in the lee of the A40, major arterial route in and out of London. It's going to take weeks, months, years potentially to demolish when the time comes. So for a long time, you've got this horrific tombstone reminding people of what happened here. So, you say it may slip out of public consciousness. I say to you, it can't. It's there, isn't it? It's just there, reminding people.
Fair enough. It's true, but it's ironic now that we're left with that, such a haunting eyesore, when initially the whole regeneration plan was to prevent it from being an eyesore. It's like, I think it's so sad that this all had to happen. I feel like change needs to happen. Like these kind of things can't happen. People know what's going on. People know these regenerations aren't for their benefit. They know this now. I think we need to talk about it like it's a fact.
Piki Seku, appreciate you talking to us today. Thanks very much indeed. The point that Piki is making there is that the questions need putting. We've heard some put today at Parliament. The bigger point is made that the public inquiry will look into some of the allegations that have been made.